Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name's Nathan Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How you doing today on this Tuesday?
I'm doing great. Still excited about the St. John's win this weekend. You can see I've got St. John's hat on. Anxious to talk about that and how they'll do with Duke against Duke, which is going to be a major challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk about that. March Madness, St. John's, school that I graduated with back last May. It's going to be fun to talk about them. First Sweet 16 appearance since 1999, so I'm all hyped for that. But let's get into some other news. We got some more NFL news, and this is a big question mark because the Vikings, in a decent competition, at least one other team was interested, but the Vikings decided to sign Carson Wentz, which is their fourth quarterback on their roster, with Kyler Murray, Max Brosmer, J.J. McCarthy, and now Carson Wentz gets added to the bunch. The Jets apparently were interested in maybe bringing in Carson Wentz, but no, it looks like the Vikings will sign him back after he made a few starts and then absolutely got destroyed. His shoulder was all screwed up that he had to, close out the year on IR. So this is an interesting case because they still think they have faith in J.J. McCarthy, that he's the future, but with all these QB signings, I have to ask the question, what does this signing mean, both of these signings mean, for McCarthy's future in Minnesota?
Well, I think it means that McCarthy's not only fighting to with Murray for the starting job, which I think he's already lost. I think that they would go with Murray over him, even if they play even in the preseason. Now he's fighting for the backup job too against Wentz. And but I don't think they've totally given up on McCarthy. I do think he has to show that he can play football, and he'll get his chance in the preseason. But I don't think he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings. Wentz, he started 5 games for the Vikings in 2025. The Vikings determined to upgrade the position after injuries and poor play were largely responsible for them missing the playoffs in 2023 and 2025. McConnell hasn't named a starter among Murray, McCaffrey, Wentz, and Brossart. Murray is the heavy favorite, though, as I mentioned, to win the job, but the Vikings claim they have not fully given up on McCarthy. As I said, now McCarthy's competing with Murray for the starting job, but also Wentz for the backup job. Nothing else, Wentz is an upgrade over Brosmer. I think you could say that. In 2025, Wentz became the first player to start a game in 6 consecutive seasons for 6 different teams. Nobody's ever done that before. He led the Vikings to a 2-3 record. He had 1,216 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Playing the final 2.5 games that he started with a dislocated left shoulder, which the pain got so bad he had to give it up on after week 8, and he had season-ending surgery. The Vikings had 4 of their 5 top offensive performances with Wentz at quarterback, and Jefferson and Wentz really connected together, and I think that Jefferson likes Wentz. Brosma then came in, took over. He's an undrafted rookie, had 2 starts, 7 total appearances, and a 14.3 quarterback QBR, which was 57th out of 62 quarterbacks with at least 1 start. McConnell said, we've learned that we've got to get a lot of guys ready to play the quarterback position. That's why they brought in Murray, and that's why they brought in Wentz. According to the team, signing Wentz is not a referendum on McCarthy. It is an exclamation point on the team's plan.
Well, no, I think that J.J. McCarthy's in some serious danger. When you have 4 quarterbacks total on the roster, that means something's wrong. That means there's going to be a quarterback battle and somebody's destined to lose. And in this circumstance, it has to be Max Brosmer isn't even a quarterback right now. His first start, he threw 4 interceptions. It was the ugliest QB performance I've probably seen since Nathan Peterman on the Buffalo Bills. I mean, that was absolutely pitiful. But no, J.J. McCarthy is at least an upgrade over that. Is Kyler Murray an upgrade over J.J. McCarthy? Yes. Has Carson Wentz performed better than J.J. McCarthy? Then yes. So he's now been relegated to QB3, and he's supposed to be the future of the Minnesota Vikings franchise. No, this is a terrible look. Signing both these quarterbacks, in fact, going after Carson Wentz and even offering him the contract when you already have 3 quarterbacks on the roster, at least this would have made sense if Kyler and J.J. McCarthy are both on the roster. Again, Max Brosmer, not a quarterback. He may not be on the roster by the time week 1 comes around, but as it currently stood before this move to sign Carson Wentz, if it was Kyler Murray's going to be the starter, and everybody knows that at this point, I don't even think this is really a competition. But then it would have been Kyler 1, J.J. McCarthy 2. Fine. That's perfectly fine. You want to grow behind a veteran quarterback, so be it. Now that you have Carson Wentz is immediately the QB2. J.J. McCarthy is now QB3. I don't think there's any competition between those 2 quarterbacks, Carson Wentz and J.J. McCarthy. I just think that overall, the Minnesota Vikings still have a quarterback problem. You think that Kyler Murray is going to be the franchise quarterback in the Minnesota Vikings moving forward. He's on a very cheap deal. It's a very team-friendly deal, 1 year, veteran minimum, $3 million or so. It's going to be an easy, or actually $1.3 million, excuse me. It's going to be a very easy contract for the Vikings to get off of after 1 year. You don't need to pay him. If he performs poorly, well, then you have Carson Wentz, or you also have J.J. McCarthy, depending, again, how that quarterback battle ends up. But I think immediately right now, Kyler's number 1, fine. I don't love him as a quarterback. He hasn't been good since I was in high school, so be it. But then Carson Wentz is number 2, and they want to say competition between the 2. No, 0 competition. Kyler 1, Carson Wentz 2, J.J. McCarthy 3. So much so, now there's questions out in the sports media. Will J.J. McCarthy ask out? Well, it doesn't really bode so well. Anthony Richardson asked out, and there are 0 takers. There is literally 0 market for a 6'4", 240 quarterback who is a very, very athletic. J.J. McCarthy's looked terrible. So I don't know how we think about this. I think he's, and I said this even about, some other quarterbacks. I think he's another Trey Lance situation. You mentioned that not too long ago. You say he's another Trey Lance. I actually think Trey Lance is better than J.J. McCarthy. I just think overall there is little to no future, because remember, it was supposed to be McCarthy not last year but the year before. Then he gets hurt in preseason, so Sam Darnold steps in, goes 14-3. Okay, so be it. Now J.J. McCarthy is going to be the quarterback here. Once he gets out there, it's like, yikes. Then he gets hurt and everything like that, and then Carson Wentz comes in, wins a couple games here and there, and gets so banged up behind that bad offensive line, and also just him being Carson Wentz, they had to throw Max Brosmer out there. Yikes. And now, by the way, I said this before on the last show. Cam Akers, their running back, has more passing touchdowns last year than Max Brosmer did. And he's a running back. So I think overall, no. Max Brosmer, yeah, there's 4 quarterbacks technically on the roster. I don't think he's going to make it to week 1, to be honest with you. I just think that this is a situation where J.J. McCarthy's actually screwed. Because even if he stays on the roster and doesn't ask out, where are the reps coming from? Where is the growth coming from? If the whole thing is, well, he's going to be our franchise quarterback, well, then you better hope Carson Wentz performs so poorly in practice he can't be QB2, and you have to send it over to J.J. McCarthy to be number 2. Otherwise, what are you doing? More interceptions than touchdowns last year. He did have a winning record, but again, you have to on a team that's as loaded as that one with so much talent and one of the best pressure defenses in the NFL. So there is a level to just baseline Vikings. You have to be a god-awful quarterback for you to be terrible in the Vikings. If you're average, like you're saying, they could make the playoffs probably. If you have average QB play, you make the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think that McCarthy will ask out, because I think you're right. I don't think there's a home for him unless maybe he's rescued by Harbaugh at San Diego. But they have they have Trey Lance as their backup quarterback. So I don't think there's a home for McCarthy. I'm surprised nobody's got any interest at all in Richardson. I would think somebody would make him QB3 on a team. Well, maybe they will before the end of the season. But I still don't think they've given up totally on McCarthy. I think what they're looking at is Murray's had an injury history. Right. So if Murray gets hurt, they don't bring in Wentz, then you're right back where you were last year with McCarthy and Brosma, right? And that would be a disaster, right? Because McCarthy, good chance he's going to get hurt, and then you're back to Brosma with his 14.3 QBR. So bringing in Wentz, I think, makes a lot of sense. He's had injury problems too. All the quarterbacks have injury problems, a lot of them. So, and the quarterback room they've got, except for Brosmer, has massive injury history. So they're looking at that they can cobble together a good play from a quarterback through 17 games, without having to go to Brosmer. I think that's how they're looking at it. So I don't think it's that they've given up totally on McCarthy. And as you say, Murray's on a 1-year deal. If he tanks and doesn't look good, and he proves what you think is that he's really not very good, then they can be off of him. So, and I don't think that then Wentz would be the guy to step up. I think then they would do some other trade or something, or maybe they'll draft something. If their record turns out to be poor, they would draft a quarterback. There's going to be a lot of good quarterbacks coming up in the draft, this next year's draft.
Well, okay, so let's say they go. I do not think they go that route at all, drafting a quarterback anytime soon. Although they might, depending on how it turns out. If Kyler Murray's not good, well, then you get off him after a year. Carson Wentz is on a 1-year deal, then you get off of him after this year as well. He's on a 1-year, $3 million deal. Now you're left with J.J. McCarthy and Max Brosmer if he is on the roster, when week 1 rolls around. He might be the taxi
squad quarterback.
He very well might be. But then at that point, next year, are you ready to go with McCarthy in the same situation you were this past year? Where it's, okay, veteran quarterback's gone. Now it's your time to shine. We were just in that situation this prior year, and it did not look good. He played one good quarter out of his first, 14 quarters that he played in? 1 or 2 good quarters in your first 14? That's not good.
I think when he played well, he got too emotional. They showed him in the locker room crying after the games. He was so pumped up from winning a game. He needs to calm down a little bit. He needs to be a little more level-headed and balanced,
Well, apparently he already has a nickname, which is not good. Because 9, his number. He says it's his alter ego. Well, if you have an alter ego and you're that bad, I'm concerned.
9.
At least win some games first. Be a good, decent quarterback, and then we can give you a nickname. Then you could have an alter ego. Otherwise, it's just cringy. It's a really, really bad look. So, if you're QB3, A, where's your chance of growth? B, how are you developing to be the next Vikings starting quarterback?
And C,
how can you say a team has faith in you?
Another year of watching.
Right.
Yeah.
And that won't work because your quarterbacks are Carson Wentz and Kyler Murray. Jordan Love developed behind Aaron Rodgers. That's something. Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback in the Minnesota Vikings. 28-year-old Kyler Murray. Are we sure that if the rationale is that, where it's you're sitting behind a veteran quarterback and you're learning, how much you were behind Sam Darnold. You were banged up, but still you were behind Sam Darnold.
As you say, Aaron Rodgers didn't play for his first 4 years, and neither did Jordan Love, and both of them
yeah, but you have to think about it. Aaron Rodgers was behind Brett Favre.
Had 4 MVPs.
Right, but Rodgers was behind Brett Favre.
No, so if Murray's
Love
terrible,
was behind Rodgers.
If Murray's terrible, then McCarthy will learn not what to do. Right? He'll say, that's not what I want to do. That's not the way to play.
I think no matter what, if you can't, A, make the playoffs, or B, go far in the playoffs with the roster that you have, and with what you're saying is Kyler Murray still a franchise quarterback, then this would actually fall decently on Kevin O'Connell. Not that he should be fired, but that we could see a situation where it's like Sean McDermott. It's like, you're doing pretty well throughout the regular season, and you're making it to a point in the playoffs. You just can't break through, where you end up getting fired anyway, even though you're a really good coach.
I doubt he's going to be fired.
I'm not saying this year, but I'm saying that
I don't think
when is enough of enough of just mediocrity? or just not performing well in the biggest moments.
They're winning 14 games a year.
No? 1 year with Sam Darnold, they won 14 games.
Yeah,
they won 9 games this past year.
No, but the year with the full year that Cousins played with them, 3 years ago.
3 years ago, exactly.
They won
13 games.
13 games.
Okay, so think about it.
When they had good quarterback play and consistent quarterback play
Yep.
and a healthy quarterback, they were fine. They were great.
Well, okay, so with a healthy season of Kirk Cousins as well, think about it. Going back and forth, alternating years of Kevin O'Connell. 13-4, 7-10, 14-3, and 9-8. Now,
He's
one of those
made the playoffs twice in 5 years.
And lost in the wild card both times.
Both times in the first round, but he did make the playoffs.
Again,
twice.
We have
how many coaches didn't make the playoffs, and how many have been fired in those 5 years?
Well, Sean McDermott kept making the playoffs and winning the division over and over again, and finally the Bills said enough is enough. You're not good enough anymore.
Yeah, well.
That's what I'm saying.
He was with them a lot longer than 5 years.
Right, he was there since 2017, but what I'm saying is the seat should be warm. He doesn't have a cold seat. Absolutely not.
No, I would agree with that.
So at some point, you're going to have to say, okay, at what point do we say is enough of alternating years of mediocrity? How about that? Where you're not living up to a standard of a team with arguably, when he has a stable quarterback, the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, a top 5 at least tight end in the NFL in T.J. Hockenson, a top tier number 2 wide receiver in Jordan Addison. Hell, DeAndre Hopkins wants to go over to Minnesota at this point. Aaron Jones is a perfectly fine running back, and a defense led by Brian Flores, which is always top 5 in the NFL when it just comes to a pressure rate and scoring as well.
We went over the Kyler Murray at length and depth in the prior show, and I said if he plays as game manager, doesn't turn the ball over, the Vikings will make the playoffs. I think they will make the playoffs.
Oh, no, I still have it here. Yeah, you have Eagles, Saints, Lions, Niners, Rams, Bears, Vikings. Still have it here for your playoff team. I just think overall, you need mediocre play from the quarterback. Otherwise, it's not great. And the look for JJ McCarthy is you're now QB3. So you really have to earn your spot. You have to be perfect in practice. You have to show that massive leap from now, year 2 to 3.
Certainly got a lot of pressure on him, that's for sure. He can't be too happy at this point. That's the way it goes. That's
if you
the
played
NFL.
better, they wouldn't have gotten Kyler Murray.
That's the NFL.
If you were available and played better, Kyler Murray's not in the picture.
Yeah, I agree.
Carson Wentz for damn sure is not in the picture. So it's going to be interesting to see. 2026 should be a fun year to watch the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to make our standings predictions later on in the year. All right, but let's jump into this. First time we're talking about this year, and it is basketball, specifically college basketball and March Madness, because what a surprise. St. John's, for the first time since 1999, is making it all the way to the Sweet 16 after a buzzer-beater layup by Dylan Darling, Rick Pitino. He's done a tremendous thing. I think he's the only head coach to win an NCAA tournament with 2 different teams. He's one of very few coaches to make the Sweet 16 with multiple teams. He's been all over the place. He's definitely a top 3 coach in college basketball history, but this one was a nail-biter, up 14.5. Then Kansas clawed their way all the way to tie it up, and then Dylan Darling does what he has basically the back end of the season, just be very consistent, this time hitting the game-winning shot, the 135th buzzer beater in the tournament's history. A little tidbit there. So my question to you is overall, after that thrilling win against Kansas, by the way, they were 3.5-point favorites in this game, and now 6.5-point underdogs against Duke. Just overall for this game, how impressive was St. John's win?
I think it was a fantastic game. It's on the edge of my seat. They were up by 14 with late in the second half, lost that lead, wound up tied up on that dinky fluky play where the guy tapped the ball in bounds, the guy laid it in, and that you wouldn't see that happening. And but St. John's was they went through ups and downs in the whole game. They struggled to find an offensive rhythm. They never really found it. Maybe a little later at the end of the first half and in the middle of the second half, they had a pretty good rhythm, but. They're lucky that Bryce Hopkins made 6 3-pointers in this game when he had made more than 3 in a game all season. And Pitino was there telling him, shoot the ball from 3, keep shooting it from 3. Ejiofor, he's like rock solid, consistent game, 18 points, 9 rebounds, but he didn't have a 3-pointer in this game. He shot it 4 times and didn't make one. Mitchell and Jackson together contributed 18 points. Was solid. Sellers had 1 3-pointer. and Dowling had one basket, a layup that won the game. I think while they struggled on offense, St. John's defense was spectacular, forcing 16 turnovers, which turned into 11 points, while only committing 7 turnovers. So they were +9 in the turnover category. That was a big factor in their winning. They were +4 in steals. They were +3 in assists. They were -6 in rebounds. They only got to the foul line 11 times, and then they only converted 6 of those, 54.5%. They were -6 on the foul line. They can't let that happen to them in the Duke game, but we'll get to that in a minute. I think while the offense struggled, they didn't give up on the three-point shot, even though they only made 11. They shot it 35 times and only made 11. They outscored Kansas by 18 points on threes. So I think it's Pitino's strategy to keep shooting the three was a good one. They lost that 14-point lead late in the second half. And then Kansas tied up the game on that fluky tipped inbounds play for that layup. And then with about 10 seconds left, Kansas had 4 fouls to give. And I think they had the right strategy, but they didn't execute it correctly. They kept fouling too soon, not taking enough time off the clock, and they used up all 4 fouls. That meant that if they fouled on the next one, that sent St. John's to the line. What they should have done is wait a little longer to foul and save one of those fouls so that when Dowling drove down the lane, they could foul him, and it still would meant that if he made both of them, they'd still go to. No, they would still would have won the game, but at least maybe they could have run the clock out. They could have run the clock out. Anyway, I thought they blew it on that. As a result, with 3.9 seconds left in the ball at half court, Dowling drove down the lane and laid it in and actually called his own play, even though he hadn't made a basket all night and he hadn't really played that well. He went to Pitino and said, "There's no more time left. We've got to do the play that I just drive down and lay it in." And Pitino went along with it, and it worked out. Kansas couldn't foul because St. John's was in the bonus. So it was a very exciting game. I gave you most of the stats there. I will say that Kansas really only had 3 guys. They had Bedunga, their center, scored 12 points. Peterson was their big player. He had 21 points, but he was only 5 of 15 in field goals. And then Council, the other guard, had 15 points. Nobody else had more than 5 points. And there were only 4 other guys scored. On St. John's, at least they had more players involved. They had Hopkins had 18 points, all on 3-pointers. Ejiofor, 18 points. Very solid game. 6 of 14. Didn't make a 3-pointer, but had 6 of 8 free throws to go along with his baskets. And he had 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block, a couple turnovers, and only 2 personal fouls. Dylan Mitchell, 8 points, but very important that he had 9 rebounds as well. And then, as I mentioned, Hopkins had the 18 on the 3 points, and Jackson and Mitchell combining for 18 points. So I think going into the game against Duke, I think it's going to be a different story. I think that Duke is favored by 6.5, which is interesting. That the points against for St. John's, they give up 69.4 points a game. Duke gives up 63. That's about the difference, right? That's 6.3 points difference, and it's a 6.5 point spread there. So it's basically looks like Duke's defense is even better than St. John's, which I find hard to believe. On the offensive side, St. John's 81.1 points a game, Duke 81.9, so they're basically even there. Field goal percentage, St. John's 45%, Duke 49%, so Duke's a little better there. Rebounds, St. John's 39, Duke 40. Assists, St. John's 16.1, Duke 16.8. Blocks, St. John's 4.9, Duke 3.3. they look pretty evenly matched to me, except for the defense. But I think St. John's will turn their defense up even more playing in the Sweet 16. I think it really comes down to the play of Ejiofor against Boozer. And Ejiofor, 16.3 points a game, 7.3 rebounds per game, assists 3.5. He's 6'9", 245 pounds. Boozer, on the other hand, 22.4 points a game, 10.3 rebounds, 4.2 assists. He's 6'9" as well, 250 pounds. I think those two guys going up against one another, the one who wins that battle, probably the winner of the game, although Duke has another guy, second, that plays behind Boozer, who's pretty big too, and he's going to be going up against Mitchell. And it's going to be up to Mitchell to stop that other guy, because if he doesn't, that'll be bad. It's interesting that Duke has never won a national championship without beating St. John's. They've always played St. John's in the years that they've won the championship, beating them. I think maybe they have better depth, right? And maybe a little more physical. But I think St. John's is very dangerous, having reached their first Sweet 16 since 1999. They're using a balanced attack. They have great defense and strong play from Zuby. I think Duke to win, they're going to have to avoid turnovers. And for St. John to win, they need to play that suffocating defense and make 35 to 40% of their three-point shots. And one thing I've noticed in these games, Duke starts slow. In both their previous games, they've started slow and they've rallied at the in the second half. St. John's has started fast in both games, and they have the momentum. So I think it's going to be a very close game. I'm looking for another very exciting game. I'm looking for St. John's.
Well, yeah, I'm hoping that as well, being an alum from St. John's. But no, I was a little scared because, especially up 14, you feel really good because last year, if we remember, they crushed Omaha, like embarrassed them, shot the most amount of three-pointers that they've ever taken in an NCAA tournament game. And this year, against Kansas, they just shot the second most, except going against Arkansas, they couldn't shoot the ball at all. And then obviously late game, RJ Lewis had that weird, really bad shot, and then Rick Pitino benched him, and there was the whole controversy about that, but they couldn't hit anything. The three-pointer, I think they shot .091 on three-pointer, which was god-awful. And this, they shot at least a little bit better, 31.4%. But yeah, up 14, all of a sudden, it's like that. It's gone. I mean, there was at one point, there was nearly a 6-minute run where Kansas went on a 16-4 run. That's bad. That's really, really bad. But I will say this about this team. Obviously, it's Rick Pitino, incredibly resilient. The defense, unstoppable. Trey White of Kansas had trouble inbounding the ball. In fact, turnovers on the game, he had 3. You have Council Jr., who had 5. Then you have Peterson, who's their best player, who also had 3 in this game. In fact, Kansas doubled up on St. John's turnovers, and they still nearly won. If this was Duke is going to win that basketball game 1,000%. I just think right now, St. John's and Rick Pitino even said this, they were just going to haul threes. Because they thought that the size of Kansas is going to be too overpowering, so what you got to do is win on the three-point game, and they did. 33-15 when it comes to points contributed via the three. But that also takes away a massive part of St. John's game. And that throughout the entire season, primarily, it's been let's dominate inside, get the fouls called on, so then they have to play somewhat conservatively on defense because everybody's going to be in foul trouble. St. John's averages over 25 free throw attempts a game. This game, they shot 11, and they made 6 of them. In fact, they only took 3 in the second half and only made 1, compared to the 10 free throws Kansas took, and they made 8 in the second half. But what was really interesting is that Kansas beat them in the fast break points, dominated in points in the paint. They had 8 more than St. John's did. And late in the game, St. John's couldn't rebound the ball at all. Boxing out was difficult. Dylan Mitchell going up against Badunga. That was a big mismatch there. Zuby got blocked down low, driving. He thought he had an open layup on the left side. He didn't. I just think ultimately, no. St. John's got somewhat lucky in this game because there was some idiocracy that was on the part of Kansas, especially late. First off, as you mentioned, the foul call. Each of the fouls, there were 4 fouls that ultimately led to the Dylan Darling game-winning layup. The first foul took 1 second off the clock. The second foul took 1.8 seconds off the clock. Third one, a little bit better. Coach finally talked to him, hey, take some time, because they're starting with 14.1 left in the second half. And then the third foul took 4.5 seconds, or 4.3 seconds, and the last foul took 2.9. So that final foul took up more clock than the first 2 fouls combined. So Kansas just played that very poorly. Then finally on the game-winning layup, you had two guys at the top of the wing worried about one singular guy. Dylan Darling just drove down on the right side, basically, essentially, a relatively easy layup because it was a one-on-one. You could have had a 3-on-1, technically, if the two top wing guys figured out what the hell was going on. They had their backs turned as Dylan Darling blew right by him. In fact, Ejiofor was supposed to set a backside screen on Dylan Darling's guy, and he didn't, just because Dylan Darling had an opening, and he ran right through. So I think that, it was an impressive win just because of the circumstances and everything. People were questioning whether or not Rick Pitino was going to be there next year. This could be the last run for St. John's and Rick Pitino. And if you think about it, basically in the history of St. John's, they've had like 2 winning seasons before 2 seasons of 30-plus wins. With Rick Pitino, they've done that in back-to-back seasons. So what Rick Pitino's done to St. John's, and he said this in his opening day press conference, which I was at actually, that St. John's going to be back in a big way, and he's done exactly that. Now, Darling has been god-awful shooting the three. He's made 1 of his last 21 and 0 of his last 16, and he took 4 threes in this game. And like you mentioned, the only points came on that one game-winning layup. Ian Jackson, NIL guy, came in to be an offensive masterpiece. He shot 33% and 2 of 7 from 3. He did put up 10 points, but you need better from him. Hell, Ruben Prey made a 3. Ruben Prey doesn't shoot threes that often. He's not that great of a three-point shooter. Now, he is a big impact player, and especially when Zuby has to take a break, he's a perfectly fine player to come in. I thought the biggest shot of the game, 1:29 left, when Kansas is going on that 16-4 run, Bryce Hopkins just says, screw it. He shoots a 3 to make it 65-61. That was the biggest shot of the game. But I thought it was very surprising and uncharacteristic, especially late in the game. Kansas had 12 of the last 15 rebounds of the game. That's an issue. St. John's didn't box out. They didn't really go inside at all, and when they did, they were highly pressured. I thought what St. John's did with Trey White, who is their second leading scorer, his first basket came with a little over 3 minutes left in the game. Not just in the first half, in the game. He had a very, very difficult time inbounding the ball as well. I just think ultimately, in order to beat Duke, St. John's going to need to play consistently well. I don't know if you pull out the same tactic of just bombs away from 3 and shoot 35 of them, because like you said, they struggled against Siena mightily. And it was just because the head coach of Siena decided to play all of the starters all 40 minutes of the game. Siena was up by like 13 points at half. And the Duke admitted it. They said, oh yeah, we were overlooking Siena. Siena should have won that game. TCU was down by, I think, 2 or 4 points at half. And then obviously Duke pulled away at the very end. But it's TCU. Duke is supposed to be the number 1 team in the country. They're the most picked NCAA champion of anyone's brackets. I think there's 20 million brackets, something like that. Duke's the number 1 team. If you're struggling mightily against Siena, playing close to TCU, and St. John's is on this high streak where they are incredibly effective, especially early in the game, going out UConn up 10-0 before you could blink. And throughout the tournament, they've been very, very consistent. Losing the 14-0 lead at halftime is definitely an issue, but I think, and this is obviously a little bit biased because I went to St. John's, but if St. John's can remain consistent and stay hot, we're going to see a St. John's, potentially St. John's UConn game to get into the Final Four, which I'm definitely going to be excited to see because Dan Hurley says he wants it to be a bloodbath in the Elite Eight. So
I think if St. John's can get by Duke, then they will get by Connecticut.
Oh yeah, no. If St. John's beats Duke, I feel very confident saying they're going to be the national champion.
I think the one possible recipe for that win is more Ruben Prey, right? He's a big guy. I say have him and Ejiofor in the game together, which they did. No. They did some of that in this past game.
Well, that's because of the size mismatch.
Yeah, so they're going to have that problem in this game with Duke because they don't have a big second guy. They're going to have to put Prey in there, and they're going to have to try to stop them down low with those 2 guys, get the rebounds, shoot the 3, play a suffocating defense. And that's the recipe for winning. Go St. John's. Win by 2.
Win by 2 again. Well, actually, Rick Pitino talked about that, especially with his buzzbit. He was asked about, being on both sides of game-winning and game-losing shots, and this is what Rick Pitino had to say about that.
I just can't imagine a player today, in today's world, with all the scrutiny, wanting the ball when he's shooting terrible. I got on him because he was digging and left the three-point shooter alone. and we weren't supposed to dig. We were supposed to stay on him at home. But for him to want the ball in that scenario just speaks volumes of what he's all about, confidence and going on the next play. So you win some, you lose some, and I'm hoping we can get Duke at the buzzer next to make up for that Christian Laettner shot.
Well, I think, man.
That's right.
I don't know
the
if it would
coach
be a
on the
buzzer
other.
beater. Oh, Coach K, Rick Pitino, that was a hell of a matchup. Kentucky Duke. I actually saw that yesterday. I watched the replay of that.
Yeah, I watched that game. I watched that game when it was played. Yeah.
So there was a late bad shot by Kentucky in that one that I think tied the game up. And to do basically a full court pass to Christian Laettner for that fadeaway shot.
It's amazing.
I mean, yeah, that would definitely eat you up. Yeah. But no, I don't think St. John's, if they need a buzzer beater, I do not. The pressure is not as intense, obviously, if you're down by 1 or down by 2.
Pitino just said it's going to be another buzzer beater.
Right, he hopes it is. I think that there is obviously a level of pressure because you're going for the game-winning shot. But I don't think there's the same level of pressure in this one when it's 65-65. Because even if you miss, we're playing in overtime.
Yeah.
I think if you're down by 1 or down by 2, I do not like St. John's chances if they need another buzzer beater.
I think it's tied because they're going to win by 2.
I'll also say this. Bryce Hopkins, he made 6 threes. The last time he made 6 threes, you have to take the previous 7 games combined. So this was a career game for Bryce Hopkins.
That's something the Kansas coach said. We left the 3 open for Hopkins because we didn't think he'd make it.
Well, yeah, no, because before this, he was like a below 30% three-point shooter. And in conference, I think he shot, 28% from 3? So this was a rare occurrence for Hopkins. Like I said,
hopefully it's not a fluke because he's going to have to to do it again.
You would hope so. Or you hope that Sellers hits his shots.
Maybe Darling can make a hit of a couple.
Again, 1 for his last 21.
Or a Loopy Polypus or whatever his name is. What is
Lefty
that guy? Leotopoulos, yeah.
Well, he went 0 for 4 in this one, 0 for 3 from 3. So, yeah, if Bryce Hopkins is going to need to be the guy to score, I don't love the chances. Is he a tremendous impact player? Yes, he plays with a high level of physicality, which St. John's has been this year, a very physical team. That's why they take 25 free throws a game. So they're going to need, I would definitely say, if you're going to put in Ruben Prey and Zuby Ejiofor, you're going to go to the paint and you need to put Boozer in foul trouble because then he has to play more conservatively otherwise, or he'll be on the bench.
I've heard them, the analysis of this game saying that Cameron Boozer will be the point guard, that they're going to put him back there so that they can bring the ball up the court with Edgy for guarding him, and then they won't have the issue with the inbounds play. So that's interesting. But if they do that, why would they put Ejiofor on him coming up the court? I'd put a guard on him at least to half court and try to steal the ball from him. You know, he's bigger, he's slower.
Well, no, because then if he goes for the steal, then you're playing a 4-on-5. I don't love that. But I will say that if they do that and Zuby Ejiofor is on him, we saw it in this game. Zuby's not a good downhill defender. You could blow by him and score a few points, which is what they did in this game. So if he plays at the top of the key, if you have speed, you can get around him. He doesn't have that lateral quickness to go up and down on defense. Now, down low, do I trust him playing defense? Yes, I do. Because, again, he blocks like nobody else. He only had 1 block in this game, but we saw against Terrace Reed, he had, 9 blocks or something?
I think
like
he's
going to
have to have his best game.
Blocks?
He's going to have his best game of the season.
Oh, you're going to need to, yeah.
He's going to need to beat his season average of 16.3. He's got to have at least 20 points.
Yeah, and even then, he had 17 in conference. You're going to need to have at least probably close to 20 if you're going to have a shot. And, again, what you do, I think the recipe...
hold Boozer to no more than 22.
Even then, if he's scoring 22, I mean, think about it. Peterson scored 21 in this game, and they had double the turnovers, and they nearly won. I think that you have to play a level. Well, and here's the big thing: if you play physical late in the second half, you're gonna have bad defense.
Yeah, but Duke has turnover issues. So
and also
St.
starting
John's
off slow,
defense,
so you have to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
And I think you can't have Isaiah Sellers shooting as badly, or Osiah Sellers shoot as badly as he did in this game.
He didn't get that many opportunities.
Well, no, because we saw
3 shots.
Not in this game, but the last one, he couldn't miss from 3. We need St. John's needs more of that. You can't. And Ian Jackson, he was brought in to be a big offensive piece, and their offense is better than it was last year. However, their defense is good. It's not as good as last year.
I thought
last year's defense was significantly better.
I thought their team looked very good on the court, coming up and down the court, particularly with Jackson handling the ball. He literally looked like he looked good out there. He looked good out there. I think he should gain. I think they should all gain confidence from that win over Kansas.
You have to, though,
right? Hopkins should gain confidence in his 3-point shot. They should have great confidence, as they probably already do, in their defense. Ejiofor should know that he's consistent. He gets those points. He gets at least 16 to 18 points a game. He's got to do a little better than that. It doesn't have to do that much better. He's got to be tough on the boards, and he's got to keep Boozer away from the basket. That's going to be very hard to do.
Well, we saw it last game against TCU. Boozer didn't have a great game, but his brother had a better game than he did.
Yeah.
So,
but Duke has got that injury, right?
Yes.
He's still out, right? He's not going to be in. So that's a plus for St. John's. So I can't wait for the game. It's Friday night, right? It's a Friday night
at 7:10. So, I mean, it's going to be tough because we had some uncharacteristically bad games in this one. I mean, Ozias Ellis took 3 shots. He's supposed to be one of their best offensive players. He also played 21 minutes. He was a starter. He's going to need to probably shoot. My guess is you have to have him shoot 6 threes. Bryce Hopkins is going to need to shoot. He shot 9 threes in this game. You want him around 11. If he's going to have a similar repeat performance to this game, you're going to have him.
I mean, he was 6 of 9. He was 6 of 9.
Right, which is a rarity. The last time he made 6 threes, again, take the last 7 games combined. And that's how you get to his 6 threes made.
6 of 9.
Right, 66% is rare for him. So
rare for any player shooting threes.
Yeah,
all he shot was threes.
Obviously. Well, you take 35 threes. That's what Rick Pitino said. He said, we're just going to have to beat him in the 3-point game. They shot 35, made 11. That's 33 points contributed to their threes, which is all of what they had in the second half. When it comes to Kansas, they shot 14, made 5. So 33 to 15. That's the difference, big time. You can't get dominated in the rebounds. You have to box out significantly better than you did against Kansas. You got dominated. Like I said, points in the paint. They had 8 points better than you. You rebounded. You got out-rebounded by 8.
Well, they were a bigger team.
So that's going to be an issue. You have to box out better. You have to play better interior defense. And again, you have to play your style of basketball. So if you are going to double up Ruben Prey and Zuby Ejiofor, you're going to have to get Duke into foul trouble. You're going to have to feed the post, let Zuby work, let Ruben Prey work. I mean, Ruben Prey's always shooting threes. But, yeah, you're going to have to let Duke into foul trouble, and then you have an opportunity to have both the drive and dish, just the drive, or play 3. Because if you go down low and you have 3-4 fouls mid to late in the second half, well, they're going to have to play a little bit conservatively or risk getting your 5th foul and fouling out potentially. So it's going to be a hell of a game.
Well, who are you picking?
Obviously, I'm picking St. John's.
And how much are they going to win by?
Give me a 4-point victory. I say
4 points.
I say it'll be 68 to 64.
I'm saying it's 60.
Zuby scores 22 and has 11 rebounds.
I say
give me 5 blocks.
67-65 St. John's.
So same repeat score.
Yep.
Are they up by 14?
I think it's low scoring. I mean, look at the defenses.
No.
Duke only gives up 63 points.
Rating.
63 points a game. And
Duke's
St.
number
John's
3 in defensive rating. Yeah.
Doesn't give up 70 points in any game.
Well, again, we just had Northern Iowa. I know it's bad to compare Northern Iowa and Duke, but Northern Iowa is, I think, the best defensive team in points allowed in the country. Out of 365 teams.
St. John's had trouble with them offensively.
Well, early in the game, not so much.
Yeah, but later on in the game, they did.
That's where you're going to need to hope you're up by 14 and not give it away again. That's the biggest thing. If Duke is going to start out slow, you better be red hot. Otherwise, Duke started slow for nothing, and in the second half, that's when they turn it up. That's where the issue is going to be put into play for St. John's. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up, we got to discuss a trade that was made. The Miami Dolphins have completed their deconstruction. The Broncos got Jalen Waddle. We'll talk about that right after this very short break.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of today's show, which is Well, the Dolphins have completed their deconstruction by trading away their final big piece on offense besides Devon Achane, and that is indeed Jalen Waddle, who was in trade discussions last year at the trade deadline. Miami decided not to move him and now decided to trade him away in the offseason to the Denver Broncos, who now have a wide receiver core of a top two of Cortland Sutton and Jalen Waddle, along with Bo Nix at the quarterback position, so they reinforced that well. The Dolphins have now nobody besides Devon Achane and Malik Willis on offense. And that's about it. So they have done a great job in essentially tanking without saying that they're tanking. So my question to you is, overall, do you think this is a smart trade for the Denver Broncos? And overall, what do you think of the Miami Dolphins heading into the 2026 NFL season?
Actually, after I studied it, I think it's a good trade for both teams. Broncos trade for Waddle means they're going to be going for the Super Bowl in 2026. They gave up a lot to get him. He's a bona fide number one, and they have Sutton too. So I think that those two guys are definitely an upgrade for them on the wide receiver ranks for the Broncos. The Dolphins, they trade Waddle means they're accumulating draft picks to rebuild the team, and the Broncos get Waddle and the Dolphins' fourth-round pick. Dolphins get the Broncos' first, third, and fourth-round picks. That's a nice haul for Waddle. Waddle's first player was the first player added by the Broncos in free agency this year. He had 64 catches for 910 yards, which would have been third on the Broncos in catches, second in yards, and second in touchdowns. They've re-signed 17 of their 21 free agents, so they're definitely going for it. Waddle adds speed and the big play element that has been missing in the Broncos offense. The Broncos finished near the bottom of the league in 3 and outs the past 2 years. 25% of their drives last year were 3 and out, which was one of the worst in the league. Since entering the league in 2022, Waddle is the 10th most receiving yards, 5,039 yards, and the 11th most yards after the catch. The Broncos used 4 picks for wide receivers in the last 3 drafts. It didn't work out all that well for them. I'd say Sutton is by far their best receiver. Peyton's now going to hand over the play calling to their new OC, Davis Webb. And 2025, the Broncos were 14th in scoring with only 23.6 points a game, 10th in offensive EPA, and 12th in QBR. So they're hoping that the Waddle addition will help them in that regard. Waddle's joining Sutton, Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, Little, Jordan Humphrey, and Michael Bandy as their receiver core. I doubt all those guys make it. That's what they got. Basically what they had last year in adding Waddle. The Dolphins have the 11th pick now and the 30th pick in the first round. They're one of 5 teams with 2 first-round picks. They currently have 11 draft picks, so that's quite a few. Their number 1 receiver now is Tutu Atwell. So my guess is they're going to use one of those number 1 picks to draft a receiver. He's joined by Jalen Tolbert, Terrence Marshall, Malik Washington, Taj Washington, and Theo Weiss, and A.J. Henning. So not many big names in the receiver core for the Dolphins. So as you said, they're deconstructing. I'd say they're destructing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I just checked the win-loss futures because we talked about when Malik Willis got signed. It moved from 4.5 to 5.5. It's back down to 4.5. So when we came on the show and said, "Oh, I can't believe it, Malik Willis adds a win for Miami," bet the under. Well, it came crashing back down to 4.5. Bet the under, which again, I already did. I now have an under for 5.5 and an under for 4.5 because this team is literally going nowhere. I do not think that the Dolphins, even with their 2 first-round picks, are going to do anything of any sort of substance that could contribute to winning football games. Because again, you have Malik Washington or Tutu Atwell or Jalen Tolbert as your top 3 wide receiver threats. And even then, your tight end is Greg Dulcich. This team has no offense, and your offensive line is not that great. You have some of the worst run-blocking offensive linemen and pass-blocking offensive linemen in the game. Devon Achane is the only notable player on offense for you. So the Dolphins are screwed. I don't care how you put it. The Dolphins are absolutely screwed. Defensively, well, you have a defensive head coach, so you hope the defense could be a little bit better, led by the former defense coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, Jeff Hafley. Realistically, this is going to be a terrible team. I think you tank. You have Malik Willis on essentially a one-year deal. Doesn't cost much. Jets got off of Justin Fields on a similar deal. I think that the Dolphins may do a similar thing. And again, I find it crazy how still there was that, it was a definite $30 million a year. No, I said it was more Justin Fields than it was, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. That ended up being the case. I think it's like $22 million a season or something like that. So Malik Willis is not the future of the Miami Dolphins. They're doing it for familiarity. That's really it. So you have what? You said pick 11? Pick 11. It's a question of, we'll do our mock drafts in actually a couple weeks now leading up to the NFL draft. So we'll have, top 10 picks. So we won't get to the Dolphins in the first, portion of our picks, the first week of our picks. We'll do it in the second and third weeks. But I really can't see any massive draft pick or any massive move the Dolphins can make to be somewhat successful. Really, any levels of success, A, due to the roster construction, and B, due to the schedule. They've one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. We went through the wins. There's maybe maximum 3 wins. 3. So 4.5 is a bit crazy. When it comes to the Broncos, yeah, like you said, they're going for Super Bowl or bust. And I do think it's pretty interesting because, yeah, you need that second key piece. You look around, is Troy Franklin... I like Troy Franklin a lot, but is he wide receiver 2 on the likes of a Devontae Smith or a Jordan Addison? No. Now you have a legitimate number 2, could be number 1 in Jalen Waddle, along with Courtland Sutton. So they're going to be pretty dangerous, and obviously it opens up the passing game, which we've seen Bo Nix start off 0-5 with an interception in games before. In a few games, actually. So in order to help out the passing game a little bit and not rely so much on the running game, and also have a new play caller, Davis Webb, which is a shock for a Sean Payton led team, really. That was a bit of a shock to see. So I do find it a little bit interesting what the Broncos are going to do here. And obviously with the defense, as good as it obviously is, you did lose a few people in free agency this year, but ultimately the defense is still very, very good. I think the secondary is going to be perfectly fine. Still have Pat Surtain. You still have Hufanga. You have Jaquan McMillan. You have a pretty good, I like Barron. Barron was obviously a first-round pick for us. I had him going to the 49ers, I believe, at the 11th pick, if I'm not mistaken, they had last year. Pass rush should still be really great. They were on pace to break the 85 Bears sack record as well. So I think this team's going to be very, very good. It's just a question of consistency, obviously, and what Jalen Waddle's massive impact will be. Will he have a true number 2 wide receiver season where we saw Michael Wilson come in for the Cardinals after, Marvin Harrison, your favorite receiver, didn't have a great year, ended up not, missing a few games here and there. And all of a sudden he has 1,100 yards, something like 1,000 yards. It's like, whoa. Devontae Smith, obviously one of the best number 2s in the game. T. Higgins, one of the best number 2s. Devontae Smith, Jordan Addison, all of them. Those are some very, very good wide receiver 2s. Will Jalen Waddle be that for the Denver Broncos? We'll see what the offense is structured around. But if we have faith in Bo Nix, if we have faith in Sean Payton, we have faith in how this team is built and how this team can do. Who says this team shouldn't be a top 5 Super Bowl favorite team?
No, I think
they're better than the Patriots today.
I think they will be.
I would take the Broncos over the Patriots.
They would have beaten the Patriots if Nix hadn't been hurt.
I agree.
They might have won the Super Bowl. They might have.
Seattle looked pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, but the Broncos defense would have given the Seattle a tougher time than the Patriots.
Well, even if they weren't healthy, maybe if it wasn't for the blizzard that ended up falling in the second half.
The blizzard helped them out a lot too, the Patriots, on that game.
Oh, big time.
I think you're right. I'm not sure you're right about Malik Willis. I think the Dolphins think he could be the quarterback for them for a number of years.
Can't be. He's not good. He's started 5 games?
Yeah. Well, he played very well for Green Bay, and they saw him for several years there. Both in the preseason and practice, in those games that he played. I think they think he's good. I don't think they would have gone out and spent the money without thinking that. I don't think they see him as a 1-year deal.
I'll put it this way. Again, I've said this before in the past. The Packers are a historically good organization. So obviously, if you go to a team that is always good, sometimes great, sometimes phenomenal, you're going to look better. And you were not dysfunctional. The Packers really have never been truly dysfunctional. In fact, the Packers have won a Super Bowl before the Dolphins have won a playoff game in this millennia.
Yeah, well, that was a long time ago. They won their Super Bowl,
which was still 10 years or 11 years before the Dolphins won their last playoff game.
Well,
the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game was December 30th of 2000.
Going way back in the history there, I don't think it matters that much.
26 years?
What's going to happen next year? And I think that the Dolphins are going to use. I think they'll use their picks. They'll pick a wide receiver. I think in the first round. I think they'll focus on the offensive line.
Has to,
and I think they're going to try to run the ball. I think they're going to try to run the ball with design runs for Willis and Achane. And then they'll throw the ball, they'll throw it opportunistically. So I think that's what they're going to try to do. And I don't think that they think looking at Malik Willis as a one-year player.
Well, I'll put it this way for that in particular. You could only run the ball effectively with both, the quarterback, kind of, but mostly with a running back. You could only run it when you have a very good offensive line. We saw this year with the Eagles. Saquon Barkley did not look like the Saquon Barkley that we know of because the offensive line was banged up, and it wasn't as good as it was the prior year. But yeah, if we're going to do design runs and then for the quarterback as well as the running back, then we're basically going to have another situation, similar, not the same, as the 2022 Chicago Bears, where Justin Fields had 1,000 yards running. And their top two running backs combined, which was Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery, they combined for 1,532 yards. They were the number one running team in the NFL. Guess how many wins they had?
4.
3.
3 wins.
3 wins. So if you're throwing it opportunistically, you're not going to win games. Because it's going to come down to who throws the ball better. That's what it always comes down to. Unless you have a breakout game like a Derrick Henry runs for 200 yards, against the Patriots in a wild card game, which was Tom Brady's last game in the Patriots blue. But if you just have a consistently good running game and you throw it opportunistically, that won't work because it doesn't work. Or you're just going to be bad, which that's what the Dolphins are going to be this year. You don't have a recipe for Devon Achane is a tremendous player. You're not going to win football games just with Devon Achane.
Well, you look at what Mike McDaniel did after Tua tanked. He took him out of the game, basically. He just made him a game manager and went with Achane, and they started winning.
And
they
then he ended up getting benched for Quinn Ewers anyway.
Yeah, and they still were competitive with a run-focused offense.
Which is what they should be, but you have to throw.
So I think that's this is what the Dolphins are going to try to do. And Malik Willis is an upgrade over what they had, either over Tua and Ewers in terms of a run-focused offense.
So right now, would you take Malik Willis over Tua Tagovailoa?
Yes.
Wow.
Because Tua was done in Miami. Would I take him? Let's say it was in if Malik Willis was in Atlanta and they traded for Tua, then it might be a different story because Tua's getting a fresh start, and I think that Tua will be the starter for the Falcons. You wait and see. I think that's
I don't doubt
going to play out.
I don't doubt that. I
think he may have a good year. He might have a good year. He's got better weapons. He's got more weapons on offense now than he had in Miami last year. That's for sure.
Well, again, it's a similar situation where there's a baseline. You have to be an average quarterback to do average on a really good team. You have to be a god-awful quarterback to do poorly on a great team. That's why Max Brosmer, 0 touchdowns, 4 picks. That's bad. J.J. McCarthy's performance, that's bad. Sam Darnold, really good. Carson Wentz, really good. Carson Wentz, he's all right.
He did okay. He got hurt.
Yeah, he was fine. When it comes to Michael Penix, not great. Kirk Cousins, played all right. Tua, we'll see. Again, I don't have a lot of faith in Tua. We saw what he could be, and he's never been able to reach that again. So, again, he should be
I think that
same playing field at least as Michael Penix. I don't know if he's better. But
Vikings going to Wentz may backfire on them because if Murray plays lousy in the first 4 or 5 games, they're going to be tempted to go to Wentz. Because Wentz is going to he played okay for them. He came in the midseason.
He knows the system.
He didn't even know the system. Now he's got the whole, he's going to have a training camp, and he's got all this time to really get comfortable with the system. Hey, he's 33 years old. He's not out of it yet. So I don't know. That is an interesting situation to say the least.
Oh, big time. Well, we also realize that when it comes to that point, Carson Wentz knows the system more than Kyler Murray does. So that very well might be the case. And I mean, if we're talking about who knows the system the best, that would be J.J. McCarthy. He's been there for 3 years. Well, this would be his third year.
I think athletically, Murray is over any of what they have.
Oh, true. Yeah, 100%.
So if he can learn the system and spend more time with the system than with his video games, then I think he'll be fine.
Well, again, that it depends. It will be in his contract. That's the biggest thing. Will he do the? Will the Vikings do the same as the Cardinals and say you have to? Was it 4 hours of film?
I think they learn not to. They'll tell him. They may tell him that, but then I got to put it in writing.
That's still crazy. How that was actually a thing. Again, I'll say the Broncos win because they have a better. They will get more use out of that trade than the Dolphins will. I don't care.
For sure.
Oh, well, depends on obviously who they draft. But I mean,
the Dolphins
may
get mileage out of that down the road because they got they got all those picks. If they pick well and those guys play well, then year 2, year 3, it could look like the better trade for the Dolphins. So I have to wait and see.
No, because the only way that would be the case is if the Dolphins are actually competitive. If the Broncos right now, they're a win now team. They have a team that can win the Super Bowl hypothetically.
I'm saying 3 years. It's
even
3 years. You got to wait 3 years to decide whether this trade is really good or not.
Well, that's fair. But I think the only way that, even if you wait those 3 years, the only way that could at least be somewhat of a redeemable trade for the Dolphins, and not just, okay, we spent all the, we got all these draft picks and got what out of it, is if they go to the same spot down the line as the Broncos do with Jalen Waddle. If the Broncos win the Super Bowl with Jalen Waddle, then the Dolphins are going to need to at least be very competitive in the playoffs to say that was worth the trade.
I'd say getting to the playoffs in the next 3 years for the Dolphins will be a win.
Obviously, it's a win, yeah. I just think that Jalen Waddle going to the Broncos gives the Broncos more than what the Dolphins will get out of those picks.
No, we'll have to wait and see. I think that the Broncos are definitely going for it.
They have to. With what you're paying to certain players, with the level of talent you have one of the best defenses that is constructed. You just had the defensive player of the year, not this past year, but the year before. You have Bo Nix, a very promising, I think goes into year 2 or 3 right now, year 3 or 4, year 3 right now. Again, the running situation was very hit or miss last year. You had injuries.
Dobbins, he gets hurt every year, but he's going to be healthy. They want him back.
Courtland Sutton's obviously a very, very good talent, and now you have Jalen Waddle to back him up to maybe alleviate some of the double teams and pressure that you get, being the sole true threat on offense. And obviously you have the best, or one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, especially pass blocking wise, definitely top 3 in the league. So this is a team that should be highly competitive. We'll see how Bo Nix plays. Again, the passing game still scares me. I think he should use his legs more, like you're saying. Kyler Murray and Malik Willis have more design runs. I think Bo Nix should get more design runs because he does have a level of athletics.
I just think Bo Nix is going to be better because Waddle is going to be.
Well, obviously, yeah. Because then again,
now he has Sutton and Waddle.
Will you double Sutton? Because then that could leave Jalen Waddle in a one-on-one. I trust Jalen Waddle in a one-on-one. Or will you just play one-on-ones all around? That opens up several things for you.
Yeah.
Because then it leaves 2 one-on-ones that you can work.
It doesn't hurt. It's going to help.
Obviously. And again, for the Broncos side of it, what were you going to do with that pick anyway? Were you going to go draft a wide receiver? Well, then you have a developed true wide receiver already. You don't got to worry about hitting
number 30. It's pick number 30, too.
Right. So, again,
the defense, they don't need anybody on defense. They signed all their free agents back.
Right. And also, you just have guys who are on, decent deals, or in the case of at least Barron, your defensive back, a young nucleus that could back up the starters already, or sometimes can play starter, because Barron did come in for a few reps anyway. So they have a very well-constructed team that, again, I have zero faith in the Dolphins. They could prove me wrong, but I just think you look at the schedule, you look at the talent that they have, or the talent they could even possibly get, and new head coach, new GM, new quarterback, wide receivers that aren't starting wide receivers in the league. They're wide receivers 3s and 4s, maybe on bad teams, wide receiver 2s. Now they're put into the wide receiver 1 role. Malik Washington, Tutu Atwell was wide receiver 4 for the Rams.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a situation where you would have to shock the world if you're the Miami Dolphins to get to where you even were last year. Because this team is not even close to where it was last year. And last year they went 7-10.
Yeah. They're not going to win 7 games.
I don't think so,
way.
not at all.
We went through their schedule. We couldn't find. We barely
3
found
wins.
3 wins.
And it was what? I think the Raiders and sweeping the Jets. Depending on what the Jets do. The Jets have 2 first-round picks this year. What will they do? I have more faith in the Jets than I do the Dolphins this year.
Another wide receiver.
Hey, I mean, I thought Malik Lemon, wide receiver out of USC, could be there at 16. You met with the Commanders and the Saints. 2 top 8 picks. Don't love that. Don't love. And you might need to go Malachi Lemon at number 2 if you're the Jets, which I think will be a little bit of an overdraft because you also have Reese out there. You need an edge because your defense right now, you bought it. It's kind of old. You have a couple very, low to mid 30s on
when
defense.
do we come up with our draft picks?
I don't know the exact
date.
date.
It's the week after, right?
Yes. That would be April 7th. April 7th. So 2 weeks from today, we begin our mock drafts. So stay tuned. That picks 1 to 10 on April 7th. So make sure you stay tuned for that. I'll give the Broncos the win for right now. Dolphins have to prove me wrong. Because right now the Dolphins they don't have any ground to stand on. Broncos nearly beat the Patriots with Jared Stidham at quarterback. Probably should have beaten them.
In a blizzard.
Even without the blizzard, they looked like they would have won that game anyway, just with how the defense was terrorizing Drake.
They could have at least tied it if Peyton had gone for the field goal instead of having Stidham try it on 4th down. I thought that was a bad call.
So we'll have to wait and see. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, 3 topics. Hour and 5. Just impressive. For this episode of the Harvey Hour, though, that'll wrap it up. My name's Nathan Harvey. That's been Stephen Harvey. We have been your host of the Harvey Hour. Depending on the news, you may catch us Friday. Otherwise, we'll see you Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Go St. John's. Night, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.